Welcome. How's everybody doing? Yeah, let's hear it. Come on. We have to wake ourselves up, right? I mean, it's 4 o'clock, which is 6 o'clock my time back home. And this is my hometown a week ago. High school flooded, kids off school all week. Isn't that crazy? What's your weather back home? Not too bad? You've been enjoying Seattle, though, right? Lots of sunshine until today. So yeah, that's my hometown. Kids had school off all week, trying to finish up the school year. Hopefully that happens soon. So here's this presentation is going to start off down here, and then we're just going to go boom. Jason's going to come up later. Jason Smith, co-creator of Xamarin.Forms. He's going to start doing a deep dive into what we got working, what we're cooking on. And but before we get there, I want to set some stage and do a little bit of a recap. Sound good? Yeah? You're in for this, right? You're up for this? Okay, just checking. Don't fall asleep on me now. So to cover real quick, and if you're new to Xamarin and Xamarin.Forms, this will be good for you to know, but I think it's also good to remember that everything is based on Xamarin Native. What we do is we have C# bindings to the native underlying toolkits. So everything you can do in Objective-C, Swift, Java, you can do with C# because we're just calling those same methods, right? Those same properties, that same UI stuff. We're hitting that. Nothing's being faked out. Okay, right? Everybody's with me? But when it comes to the UI, what we end up doing is on iOS, you have a nib, you have a storyboard, the same stuff that you would do if you were using Swift and Objective-C. On the Java side, it's AXML or XML, depending, I guess, you can do both, right? But it's the same native stuff, and then on UWP, you have your XAML. So you can share tons of logic there. In my experience, and I've been a software developer for a little over 20 years now, obviously started with a lot of web, then a lot of what we used to call the interactives, right? Flash. I know there's no Flash people in the house at all, right? If you're a Flash person and you would admit to that, not happening. But I loved Flex, and as I love Flex, I love Silverlight, and I loved C#, so anyway. We all have stories. We don't always make all the best. Anyway, so, but in my experience, and I've been doing Xamarin development on my own, I joined the team back in January in the role that I am, and I didn't really tell you what my role is, so maybe I'll just tell you that real quick. I am the program manager for Xamarin.Forms, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I do in that role later. But in my experience doing consulting and for the clients and the apps that I've written with Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android, we're sharing upwards of 60–65% of our code base, and then we're expressing the UI in the native stuff. So very powerful stuff. Now, building on top of that is what Xamarin.Forms does, right? So everything below the line there is still Xamarin native. You can still get access to all that stuff. We don't block you out of anything. We're giving you more capability, and that's a theme that I'm going to keep bringing up. We're all about helping you do more and not blocking you from doing the things you need to do. What we give you, though, is we give you that shared UI layer, and those are the forms elements. We have the abstracted label, button, list view, all that sort of thing. And then we have platform renderers for iOS, Android, UWP, where you can get down there, and that's all the native stuff. So it's as simple as that. That makes sense? Everybody's with me? Right on. So the important part is you can do it all. You have access to all the APIs, native performance, native, especially with Xamarin Native, right? You get best of breed, and then you can share even more. My experience here on this side is we're sharing upwards of 90% or more of our code base across our applications, and that's deploying to iOS, Android, and UWP, which I think is pretty good. Yeah? Yeah? No, you don't like sharing 90% of your code? Cool. Yeah, you're that kind of crowd. I understand. So a little recap for you. 1 year of open source. About this time last year, and I believe it may have been at Build, I was paying attention at home on my couch with my live stream. It was announced open sourcing of Xamarin.Forms, which was very exciting, right? So a few things that have happened recently, but also over the year, is that we announced our public roadmap. And I'm kind of responsible for communicating those things there. So if there are things there that you want to see or hear more of or more explanation, I'm your guy. So that's a quick link to the roadmap. Highly suggest you check that out. I was on GitHub, so I was running some numbers. We've had 70 contributors, 700 merge pull requests, and 37 evolution proposals. So we've got some good traction, some good activity, but we want more. We want more of you. Let me ask you this. Any contributors, anybody has contributed to the Xamarin.Forms project on GitHub here today? I got Brian's here. Who else is here? Come on. All right, let's give Brian a round of applause. I contributed too. I'm pretty sure I updated a README somewhere along the line. Just because I've been developing for 20 years doesn't mean they just let me go in there and muck around with the code. So what's Xamarin.Forms evolution, you ask? Well, this is our approach to how we're evolving the platform. So if you have something that you want to see and you want to suggest that, that's user voice, right? Oh, I would love it if you did this. But if you actually want to flesh out that idea and have a discussion around what the implementation would look like for that idea, come give us a proposal on the evolution forum, okay? And we have a couple that have been implemented already. And sometimes it's something that the internal engineering team will implement, but sometimes it's also up for grabs. And if you are willing and able to implement part of it or more of it, that's fantastic. We've had some people take on a task and say, hey, I can only do the iOS side. That's my bread and butter. Can somebody else help me do the Android and the UWP? And you can team up, right? Community, right? So check that out. Title, summary, API spec. Again, it's not user voice. It's help us really spec these things out and have a deeper discussion about what it is that we're doing. And you can certainly join in the conversations. Maybe you're not the person that wants to spec it out, but you want to come in and say, I like that idea. I'm behind that idea. Give it the little +1, the thumbs up, all that sort of thing, right? OK. So what else have we been doing over the past year? Features and enhancements. So we've got a lot of things on here. Startup time is a big one that we've been working on. We've made some fair progress there. We've got embedded native controls. So within your XAML, you can just say, hey, iOS UI label, iOS text UI text field. Those native controls you can get to directly. And you say, well, what happens if I run that XAML on Android? Nothing. It's not there because it doesn't know what to do with it, right? But on iOS, it works. Same thing would go if you were to use the Android stuff. So if there are controls that we don't immediately have a forms renderer for, which there may be some, that's one way for you to do that, and you get that native control, right? Again, giving you the ability to do more and not blocking you from accessing the things you want to access. Accessibility we're working on, and that's in the upcoming release. A bindable picker. That's something that I guess we didn't have for a while, and some people were like, hey, I can't do binding with the picker. So that's out there now. Fast renderers is in preview, macOS preview, a lot of really good stuff on here. Deep linking. If you haven't used app links yet, it's a very cool way to plus up your app so that if somebody's searching from the web or even on the phone, you can bring them directly into the content within your app that they're looking for. And we have some great documentation on that up on our developer portal. But then again, this is something that I think a lot of you are very interested in, .NET standard support. So with the preview release that we're going to be showing you and announcing today, you now can use Xamarin.Forms in your .NET standard projects. Cool? Anybody interested? Yeah? So let's talk a little bit about the ecosystem. So one of the fun things that I've been able to do since I started in my role is meet some of our component vendors as well as people out in the community that are doing really cool things. And I tell you what, the enthusiasm that I get from people doing things with forms is pretty infectious. It's like, man, people really get into this stuff. So for example, out in the hub, have you guys been exploring the hub, getting all your goodies? Did you guys get the fidget spinner? If you don't, who wants the fidget spinner and wants me to tell you where it is? OK. Syncfusion has the fidget spinner. OK? Go check it out. Let them give you their pitch and everything. They have really cool stuff. Grape City, Infragistics, Telerik. I do want to call attention to the Xamarin Show and the Xamarin podcast, a couple of shows we have. James Montemagno, Pierce Bogan put together some really nice content. They keep having me on and making me say things. I do my best. But if you want to be able to keep track of what's going on in the community, hear cool stories about what people are building with Xamarin.Forms, those are some great places to go. Other great people on there as well. So here are some cool slides that is not animating properly. Where's my animation? Oh, it's missing the background. OK, guys, here's what this is. This is Infragistics, really cool components They've released some really awesome tools recently. They're putting a lot of investment into Xamarin.Forms and the app map and a lot of these really cool features. There is actually in white text at the very bottom, which you can't read because you're not superhuman, but there is a build offer for like a 20% off. So when you see my Twitter handle, you follow me on Twitter, and I'll tweet that out for you guys or something. I'll talk to Brian. We'll figure that out. But I want to make sure you guys get that, OK? Cool? I apologize for that. Our slides got jumbled up. Telerik has also been putting a lot of investment into Xamarin.Forms. Tons of controls, native controls also for iOS and Android. Don't want to overlook that. Of course, we're very happy and proud about the work that they're doing with Forms. And there's a link down there. You can check their stuff out. And they're all about the ninjas. Who's a ninja person? What you got? We got ninjas. We got unicorns. What else do we got? Huh? No. There's no other camp. It's just unicorns and ninjas. Rock stars. You got to have rock stars. All right, cool. So let's talk a moment about quality and performance. So this has been a big mantra, and I keep preaching it. And I'm going to keep preaching it and keep preaching it and keep preaching it because we can do better. We want our stuff to be solid and stable, totally reliable. When that new build comes out, we want everybody to have the utmost confidence. Boom, I'm updating my NuGet packages. No concerns. My app's going to run great, right? That's the goal. And to suggest that I would want anything less is ridiculous. So we have been working hard on this. I've been working with the support team very closely, and we are triaging aggressively. As new issues come in, I think if you have been around the community for a long time, you have seen an uptick in our responsiveness when you first submit issues. We're trying to be all over that. Now, does that mean that we're resolving the issues like super fast and right away? You know, we're getting there, right? One step at a time. We would always love to be able to resolve issues very quickly. Fact is, we need to prioritize some stuff. But reproduction projects that you can provide as you have issues, super helpful. It's not just us being lazy and saying, hey, I'm not going to go build and try to reproduce your issue. But the more information you can give us, log files out of the IDEs, that's super helpful. I really want to get things as stable as possible. On the other hand, we also have performance. So I opened up the discussion at the bottom there, the last point, in the Xamarin Forums, where everybody can join in, talk about your best practices, but also talk about where you need to see better performance and on which platforms and devices. It's a big discussion, right? And the more that we can talk through these things together, and we as a development team can share with you what we're working on and what we're doing and why things are certain ways, we can start surfacing really good information and finding some stronger ways forward to achieve the performance we need. XAML-C, if you're not familiar, has been reported, and Matthew Robbins did a little test on this, and it was reported down in Australia, so it's not home-baked numbers here. He's seeing 5 times faster performance on his applications when he enables XAML-C from not. Who wants 5 times faster applications? Yes. Right? OK. Fast renderers for Android. Jason's going to dive into a little bit more what that's about. I'm very excited. It's promising. It's not necessarily going to change your app overnight, but it's something that if you use a lot of those controls, and as we do it with more controls, you're going to see better performance over and over and over again, in general, improving the architecture of the whole renderer system. And then startup time, we're going to continue working on that. List views, let me ask you this, who has an app that has no lists in it at all? Because that would be really interesting. I think we all use lists. So how important is that we make sure that that thing screams fast, buttery smooth scrolling, right? Recycling, all that. So you're saying, well, that's great, Dave, over the past year, but what have you done for me lately? And this is a bit self-indulgent, but my daughter always said, why do you take so many pictures of yourself? So all I'm saying is, I'm your guy. We heard you loud and clear when you were like, we want to know more of what's happening within the team, within the platform. We want better communication. So I've taken it on as my personal project to be that conduit for you. So you want to know what's going on. You want to make sure that your voice is heard in terms of what's important to you. You want us to celebrate with you, right, about what you're able to achieve and what you're doing. I spent probably the first month solid talking to customers. Hey, what's going on? What have you been able to do? How are you getting such amazing animations and things like this? And learning from the customers, but also building that communication. So The same goes for you. Please come find me in the hub. Find me on Twitter. How many of you have interacted with me so far like I'm not a total stranger to you? Okay, cool, awesome. So it's good to see some of you. You did. You didn't really know who I was until I got up on stage, but that's okay. It's all good. But okay, point made. I love you. I want to hug you. Seriously, I do want to hear what you're working on and how I can help you. So I think that's big. I think that's huge. And tell my daughter the pictures went to good use. We've also released the Xamarin.Forms previewer. So if you're not familiar with the Xamarin.Forms preview allows you to do, it works both in Visual Studio for Mac and Visual Studio 2015, I believe, and 2017 on the PC. But it gives you a view of your XAML once you've compiled it, and you can start editing it on the fly, which is pretty cool. Now, there are a few limitations to it, but overall, I think the majority of you will find it extremely helpful so that you don't have to build and run things on device necessarily to see your changes right away. It's a much faster loop, right, so that you can style your screens. I was talking to a customer yesterday who was sharing that this is a really useful tool for his team, I think of about 7 developers. It's sped them up nicely. So we're going to continue to work on that. I've got a list of my own things that I really want to see improved there. But how many of you were in the keynote this morning? Did you happen to see anything in the keynote that was pretty cool? Something called Live Player? This thing is hot. It is hot. So check it out. Download it. If you were in James's session earlier, James Montemagno demoed it in a session earlier today, which I understand went really, really well. Xamarin.com/live. Check it out. iOS and Android, essentially live refresh updating, right? So there's some debugging capabilities as well. It does connect to your device once you get that thing paired. And it's just amazing. I mean, it's what you've been wanting. So now you got it. Let us know what you think too. Give us feedback because I'm sure that we're gonna be making some improvements there as well. So what's available today to you is 2.3.5 Pre-3, because that's not a mouthful, which includes the .NET Standard compatibility. It is compatible 1.0 from technically, but what I'm hearing from the engineering team is we kind of really suggest 1.1, 2 if you can, for your best experience. Fast renderers for Android, button, image, and label are available. And again, Jason's going to mention more about what that is in just a minute. Accessibility is out there, so now you have hint and name, so that when you're doing voice, if you have users that need that accessibility control on their devices, you get that voice hinting. XAML C type improvements, a lot of improvements in this. We're getting more and more coverage so that you get full type checking at compile time, which I think everybody will really appreciate, so you don't have to wait for the runtime and then you get some bizarre stack trace and you don't quite know what's going on. So lots of improvements there. Another 160 plus bug fixes, enhancements, and the macOS preview, which I'm going to come back in a little bit and show you. But right now, I'd like to ask Jason Smith to please come to the stage. And I'd like to ask you if Forms has ever done anything good for you. Would you please give Jason a hand? Because he is the co-author of this thing. Right on. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Dave.
I'm going to sit in the front row, and I'm going to watch because this is going to be awesome.
Oh, can we get another round of applause for Dave? He's an incredibly polished and well-spoken presenter. There will be no more of that. So I'm Jason. I've been working at Xamarin for 5 years, Microsoft for a year, and I've been working on Xamarin.Forms almost that entire time. But today, I'm here to talk to you about Xamarin.Forms 3.0. So we're going to be coming out with this somewhat soon. I don't have an exact date for you yet, I'm sorry. But Xamarin.Forms 3.0 is really about 2 things. It's about performance, and it's about features. And it's really about performance first. And so that's what we're going to talk about first here. When we talk about performance, we mean there's a couple caveats here. And the first I want to mention is that not everything we're going to talk about is going to come out in the 3.0 release itself. It's going to come out during the 3.0 series. So you're going to see some of these things rolling out with the initial 3.0 release, and you're going to see some of these things rolling out as we continue to develop them. And the first major performance improvement that we're going to be looking into doing here is something we're calling layout compression. Now, some of you may have heard us talk about this at another summit at one point, but I think for most everybody here, this is going to be new. And so to understand layout compression and why it matters, I just want to very briefly give you guys a 1,000-foot overview of how layout cycles work in Xamarin.Forms. Has anybody here, you've all written Xamarin.Forms apps before, right? Yeah? All right. And have you guys ever had performance issues with your layouts? Yeah. OK, I'm about to show you why. And I'm going to show you how we're going to fix it. I'm going to grab a thing of water, too. So by the way, you're about to see the only animation in my slides. Be prepared to applaud. OK, so when layout happens, I'm not getting my notes down there. Oh, well, I'll stay near this. When layout happens, there are two main passes. The invalidate pass, where all the invalidation bubbles up to the root of the app, and then the resolving pass, where the layout then bubbles back down and everything gets new layouts. And if the layout bubbles up through a lot of things, you get a lot of cycles. And those cycles take time. And so first we have our invalidation pass, and then, ta-da, we have our layout loop. And I can go into detail, and I've gone into much greater detail in previous talks, and they're available on the Evolve website, if that's still up. I don't actually know. So you can watch those if you want to learn more about this cycle. But the important thing is to know that there's two parts of that cycle. And so what you get today when you form a Xamarin.Forms hierarchy, like we have up here on the top, is a real renderer hierarchy, as we call it, on the bottom. And so on the top, we have all your Xamarin.Forms objects, and on the bottom, the actual controls that get created by the Xamarin.Forms subsystem. And what we can see is that there's almost a one-to-one mirroring, except on the bottom row, everything is kind of duplicated. And what this means is that your layouts are going through a lot more controls, and they're looping a lot more. And you're paying a performance penalty for that. And so what layout compression does is says, well, in reality, all these Xamarin.Forms layouts, they're all just virtual anyway. They don't have to be represented by a UWP stack panel or a UWP panel or a UI kit, UI view. So what we can do instead is just kind of mush them all together and make sure that we just compute where everything goes in that master layout. And the end result is you have fewer elements. Now, there's still a problem with this slide. There are still way too many boxes on the bottom, and each of those boxes represent a performance problem. And so what we need to do is address that problem. And as David's mentioned, this is where we start talking about fast renderers. And fast renderers are a very simple concept. Dave, you left your phone up here. Fast renderers are the idea of removing the duplication. So in Xamarin.Forms, when we first created it, we said, well, we need to get a lot of renderers done. We have 3 platforms to hit, and we have a small team. So what we did is we made a base class renderer, and that renderer could then host any other control. Straightforward, easy. It was easy to just go, OK, make a renderer, subclass it, shove in a button. Make another renderer, subclass it, shove in a label. Right? And you can see how you can build up a bunch of renderers very rapidly. The problem was that you introduced this duplication layer. And that was fine for line of business apps where performance didn't matter that much. But as the product grew, that mattered a lot more. So with 3.0, we're going to be bringing in fast renderers. And with fast renderers, what we see here is when we combine it with compression, we can actually end up with fewer native elements than you have Xamarin.Forms elements. This gives you a really big performance boost. So when I said that there's going to be a slow roll on some of these things, this is going to be one of them, because we don't have the advantage of just newing up a new renderer and shoving in a label and calling it good. We have to build each of these from scratch. So you're going to see some of these rolling out with 3.0. You're actually going to see some of them rolling out with 2.3.5. And The rest will kind of roll out throughout the 3.0 series. And we're going to be hitting Android first, because I believe that's where most of you will agree the biggest performance problems exist. And we'll be moving on from there. So fast renders, you can get them in 2.3.5 now, but image, label, and button only, please test them out. Let us know what kind of performance improvements you get. If you have a page that's really heavy in those 3 controls, we're really interested to hear how it goes. So those are the pure performance enhancements. So those are the ones that you're going to get for free. You don't have to do anything to get them, really. Let's talk about some features. So features coming in 3.0. How many of you guys know CSS? Yeah, everyone. Have you guys ever used the Flexbox model? Yeah, a couple people? Do you like it? Yeah? All right. It's really not a great question for an audience. Well, we're going to be introducing something called Flex Layout. And this is exactly what you think it is if you've ever worked with Flexbox. It's used for flowing layouts and adaptive layouts. And it's very straightforward and easy to use. Basically, you create a Flex layout, and it will start flowing your elements. I apologize that there's no code highlighting on this one. So Flex layout is used for all sorts of different things. Particularly when you have things like an image view or a gallery app, it's particularly useful. But you can use it in list views or whatever else. We're going to be supporting all the basic properties that you're used to with Flexbox. So if you are a developer, this is going to look very, very familiar. If you're not a developer, you're going to get to love this. It's actually a really great feature. We're also going to be bringing along some list view improvements. And these are going to include faster loading. And this is coming in through both the fast renderers and a reduction in the intermediate layers in the list view. That's going to come from the fact that we're no longer going to require you to use cells. You're going to be able to, in your data templates, just directly insert the view. And by doing that, we can remove an intermediate layer. Should also remove some confusion for those of you coming from WPF or UWP. And lastly, we're going to be supporting direct item insertion. So you're going to have that items list, and you can just start packing in views into it instead of having to have an item source and a data template, similar to how you've used a table view before. It's thirsty work up here. Have you guys ever written a renderer for Xamarin.Forms? Anybody out there written one? You guys ever notice that the APIs for them are quite different across the different platforms? Yeah? We're going to standardize that. Now, we're not sure how far we can go with this because we want to maintain as much backwards compatibility as we can. In fact, we want to maintain full backwards compatibility. But we're going to do everything we can to bring that divergent API across Android and iOS and UWP and merge them into a single standardized API. This should make it a lot easier for you to write a renderer in Android, take that code, copy and paste and modify it in iOS, and have it mostly just work. We're also going to be including a bunch of little features. For you MVVM lovers, we have one-time binding coming down the pipe. And with one-time binding, you'll be able to dramatically speed up things like list views, where you're not actually two-way binding your data sources. It will also reduce garbage collection events. So when that comes and lands in 3.0, if you have data-bound lists, really consider switching to one-time binding. We have some XAML improvements, as Dave has already mentioned. We're going to be looking into doing more than we do right now to remove reflection from XAML. So currently, when XAML compiles your XAML, most of it gets compiled, and some of it calls out to methods that do reflection to figure out what needs to happen. As we continue to progress the XAML feature, hopefully more and more of that will go away, and XAML will become even faster than it is today. Lastly, we're going to be introducing a CSS-like styling syntax. I tried to get a demo of this ready for today, but yeah. The idea here being that, well, if you have a flex layout, you should have CSS to style it with. And so we already have a internal beta of this. This will be going out with the 3.0 release. And lastly, we're going to be introducing, and these last two are kind of two sides of a different coin. We're going to be introducing a visual state manager, which you UWP and WPF developers should be intimately familiar with. And we're going to be introducing what we're currently internally referring to as adaptive layout, which is akin to the UWP relative layout. Unfortunately, we've already used that name. So we're going to have to figure out what to call that one. So yeah, those are kind of the other major features we're coming through. They're kind of the minor bullet points. And lastly, we have embedding. And embedding is a technology that actually exists in Xamarin.Forms today. It allows you to take a Xamarin.Forms page and use it in a non-Xamarin.Forms app. Has anybody here ever done that? Yeah, one, two, couple guys. Yeah, that's about what I expected. It's hard right now. It's not easy enough. So with 3.0, we're going to be introducing a much more complete embedding API that allows you to embed, say, a content page as a fragment in Android rather than a whole activity, or a content page in iOS as a UI view controller. And we're also going to be looking at doing something I think is really interesting. And I have to couch this a little bit, and we're not sure we can pull this off yet. And we're really looking for your feedback. And we want to know what you think, because we think it might be pretty cool. And the idea would be to start embedding Xamarin.Forms into Objective-C and Android Java apps. So if you have a native app that doesn't use Xamarin, you can then take a Xamarin.Forms page and bring it into that app. And again, I have to stress, this is not for sure. We really are looking for your feedback. We want to know that this is something that's interesting to you. And while you're giving us your feedback, if you can think of any other scenario, out of order. If you can think of any other scenarios whereby embedding might be useful to you, please feel free to share. And as I mentioned, when you embed, it works on content pages primarily, so you're not going to be bringing across navigation pages. You basically navigate at your native level, but you bring across content from Xamarin.Forms. But you're still going to have full support for all those Xamarin.Forms services. You still get data binding. You get the dependency service. The messaging center comes and works. So all that stuff is still working. OK, lastly, some new backends. I've said lastly like 3 times. Tizen. So the Samsung guys have done an absolutely amazing job creating a Tizen backend. Has anybody seen their booth? Yeah? It's really beautiful. They've done an absolutely bang-up job. Here's what it looks like. A Tizen runs on phones, TVs, watches. I wouldn't be surprised if they got it running on toasters. It's just everywhere. And they've built some absolutely amazing and beautiful controls. So if you're a Xamarin.Forms developer, it should be really easy for you to go to Tizen and build some really beautiful apps. We're also going to be bringing across the WPF backend. I know some of you have been looking forward to that. This is in development now. We don't have a preview of this ready, but hopefully in the next couple months, we'll be putting a preview out. We also have a GTK Sharp backend in the works. So if you're a Linux lover, this should be a big boon for you. Yay, Linux. Fun fact, I actually used to work for Canonical for a couple years on Ubuntu Linux. And so I'm a big fan. I love Ubuntu. I do not run it. So here's a preview of GTK Sharp. And it's not the most beautiful app right now, but GTK isn't always the most beautiful toolkit. And but it works. That's all data bound. It's all just Xamarin.Forms apps. No real need to modify. And lastly, as Dave mentioned, we're going to have a macOS backend. And this backend is being developed by one of our lovely developers out in Portugal. And it's actually already, I think, available in the nightly build for preview. So if you want to pick this up today and start playing with it, should be a lot of fun. And I think at this time, I'm going to invite Dave back up here, and he's going to give a demo of the macOS backend. So if you guys can all give Dave a round of applause.
Right on. Give Jason a round of applause. That was excellent. And you left me so much time to do demos. I can demo whatever I want. I can play video games up here, make you guys watch. It'd be awesome. All right, so now, this is the real test of skill. Can I control the switchers and all that jazz? Oh, I need to log in. Of course I do. All right, you guys can see this, right? So I'm going to give you a quick demo of the Mac OS, and then I'm going to give you a demo of a feature that he just mentioned, but you're still digesting it. So I'm going to give you some time here to see the Mac OS, and then I'm going to blow your minds. So here we have, let me give you an orientation here into my application. I can use the whole slide. Isn't that cool? All right, so this is the weather app sample. You can get this off of our GitHub. I feel like the theme of weather, you notice I did not include a photo of where Jason is from. I included my photo with the flooding. Well, he's from the Bay Area. It's like the Garden of Eden most days out of the year. And I just felt that was ridiculous. I'm not going to celebrate that. That's unacceptable. So, but weather, it's all about the weather. So let's take a look at some weather. So here's an app. This is a Xamarin.Forms app. And essentially all I've done to this is I have added a Mac app to it. So I went ahead and added the Mac app. I'll show you what that looks like just real quick to give you some context. Scoot out a little bit. So this is the file new. You go down to app. You choose the Mac Cocoa app, right? You set this up. Has anybody done this before? Not on your Windows machines. This is a Mac thing. So first question you're asking is, can I do this on my Windows machine? No, same prerequisites that apply to Xamarin.Mac apply to this for now. I say for now because we work with some really smart people, and wouldn't that be cool? Wouldn't that be cool? Hey, we're about empowering you to do more. Are you getting that message? More. Okay, so you get the file new experience. So now that I have that in here, first thing I need to do, I set my reference to my Xamarin.Forms project, which I have here. That's my weather app, right? That has my XAML, my Xamarin.Forms app, all that stuff. And then I need to obviously add my Xamarin.Forms package here. Now, he mentioned it's in the nightly builds, which if you're not familiar, we didn't have a slide for that, but that's a good thing to highlight for you. We do have nightly builds. And nightly, of course, is the worst name ever for it because it doesn't actually happen at night. And, well, depending on where you are, I suppose. We have a global community. But it is available, and if you don't see a package for a couple of days, it's not because we didn't feed the hamsters. It's probably because we've got a broken UI test or something like that, and we're working to fix it, because we're not going to release anything broken out into that feed for you. There is a blog post on the Xamarin blog, so I recommend checking that out. It's also very useful if you want to know, hey, I'm hitting an issue, I wonder if it's been fixed yet. Pull the nightly. Compare your issue against the nightly, and you might find that it's not there anymore. Because there are a lot of things. Our builds that we release are curated, right? So there are commits in the master branch that are not in each release, because once we fork and branch and do all that stuff, you guys track with me, right? So there's stuff there that isn't in every release. OK, so I've got my forms package in here. I need to then update a couple of things. First of all, in my app delegate, it needs to inherit from this forms application delegate. Okay, so this is Xamarin.Mac type stuff. Not even type stuff, it is forms type stuff. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a window because I need to be able to attach my application to the window. And if I don't have a window, I have nothing to display my app on. It requires me to override and provide this main window. This is traditional Mac stuff. But then this is really everything we do here. Just like you would in your iOS, your Android, your UWP, you're going to initialize forms, and you're going to load your application, right? Easy peasy. There is one little tricky thing, which I'm going to show you a screen, and it's not going to necessarily make a ton of sense. But essentially, the way that Mac works is you have storyboards, And since we're not using the storyboard, the UI is being done with Xamarin.Forms, we don't need the storyboard. So I removed the NS storyboard reference in the info plist. So just a quick note to you. And I'm listing these things off. There's actually a wonderful guide that I just became aware of on our developer portal. And if you've not been to the Xamarin developer portal, I highly recommend it. There's lots of really good content on there. Jason actually referred to his presentation from Evolve, which had amazing tips and tricks for performance, explained the layout cycles really, really well, how to do custom layouts and things like that. Tons of excellent content on the portal. All right, so once I've got that done, I essentially am ready to run my app. So this is a sample demo app. I'm going to run it on the Wi-Fi because I am adventurous. That is a Mac app. Applause now. I know you're saying, well, you're obviously not a designer. And actually, that's not true. I am somewhat of a designer. Holy cow. That's like a river icon. Now, this is actually not a joke. I'm not. Maybe there's flooding back home again. Oh, look at the temperature. Oh, it's whacked out. This is the Weather Service API. That's not our code. That's not a forms issue. Which is not something I can always say when you guys come to me and you're like, I'm having an issue. And it's like, well, it's not really a forms issue. It's like, I don't really care if it's a forms issue or not. Right? Hey. OK, cool. So that's Xamarin.Mac. Lots more coming. This is actually in 2.3.5 pre-3, which is out now. Click the little pre-release in your NuGet package manager when you're updating your projects, and you can get it. Cool? Check that out. Let us know what you think. We're doing quite a bit more work here. There's some theming work to be done. We want to make this thing beautiful, gorgeous, very useful for you. And you can see I didn't need to do much work, and now I have a Mac app. Cool? Right on. Making it easy and letting you do more. OK. So with that, I'm going to kill that. And I'm going to move on to my next demo, which there's a slide that tells you I'm about to demo forms embedding. Don't need to show you that slide because all it says is forms embedding. While I'm doing this, I'm going to switch over to 6. I'm going to go to the Windows machine. Yes, because it went to sleep, obviously. Here it goes. Oh, isn't that beautiful? Don't know where that is. All right, cool. So Jason shared with you a little bit about what forms embedding is. And your reaction was kind of like my reaction when I first heard about it. I'm like, huh, that's kind of, I guess, interesting. But here's the thing. It opens up so many possibilities for you. So possibility number 1, you have a Xamarin.Forms app, and you started with Xamarin.Forms, and you've grown your app, you've grown your app, you've grown your app, and now you're realizing, oh my goodness, I really should have done a Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android app, right? Has anybody gotten to that situation? You're like, oh, did I go down the wrong path? A few of us. I've done it. Well, with Xamarin.Forms embedding, what you now have a path for is you can create a new Xamarin iOS, Xamarin Android app, and you can start bringing in all the stuff that you want to keep from Xamarin.Forms. And you can new those up as pages and screens. You still get all your data binding. You get the dependency service. You get the messaging center, right? But everything that needs to be native, because remember, when I led off the presentation, what did I tell you about the best of breed that we have? Xamarin Native, right? That is your best performance, best of breed. You're as close to the metal as you can possibly get when you're building your apps. Xamarin.Forms embedding allows you that path to that. Savvy? So let it sink in. I'm going to show you some demos. It's really easy, and it's very powerful. I think that as you experience it, when I started experiencing it, I was like, oh, man, I could totally use this. And if you've been using Xamarin for a long time, it may be slightly reminiscent to something that we used to have. What was it called? Mono dialogue? Yeah. It's not the same thing at all. All right, so here's what I have in this application. It's also the weather app, but I'm not using the forms version, and I will show you that it's not the forms version. Let's see, I have the UWP open here, and I have the app. And I don't know how to do the whole fancy zoom thing on Windows 10. There's probably a way. I don't have it. We are initializing forms here, but that's only because we're about to embed something in it. I guess probably the thing to show you is we are a UWP application. OK? Fair? Not a form. We're not extending any form stuff. It's UWP app. Same thing on iOS. We can take a peek at the app delegate. And we are extending UI application delegate, not a forms class. Following me? OK. So if we run the UWP application, I'm already here. I'm going to run the local machine. So it's going to launch for us the UWP version of this application. And then I'm going to be able to show you how I was able to bring Xamarin.Forms into it and add a shared screen that is beautiful. Dun, dun, dun. Here we go. All right. Very similar to what you already saw, right? The difference is down here in the corner, I have this little button, which has my history. Woohoo! Look at that. That little guy, that beautiful little thing with the picture and the list and the icons, which is a custom font, by the way, UWP, Hearts, Xamarin.Forms. That is a shared Xamarin.Forms page being used across native UWP, Xamarin iOS, and Xamarin Android. I know you're just clapping now because I'm trying to get you to, but seriously, this is pretty cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility to have different ways that you architect your applications. You're not boxed in by anything. You can do way more with this. It's very cool. All right, so just to show you, oh, that's interesting. Seattle is all rain, but San Francisco, St. Louis, Boston, and Denver, all sunshine. So don't you wish you were there? Cool, yep. And then we actually have it adding back to the list. Cool, so that's UWP. Let's flip over to Android. I still have my Android running, don't I? Cool, cool, cool. All right, so here's my Droid app. And well, let me do this before I move on. I haven't actually switched that yet. I want to show you where this is actually happening. So I showed you the forms in it was happening, right? Then where is the other little guy? Right here. This is everything that needs to happen. New history. History is the name of my XAML page. And then .create framework element is how we do this on UWP. That's it. At that point, I have my XAML page. I have a native UWP page at that point, or a framework element. And I can then add that. In this case, I'm adding it to my history flyout content. Simple as that. That's I mean, I know that you wanted more code to be able to show your boss that you were working super hard and everything, but that's pretty hot. Always with the jokes, Dave. My daughter did not approve any of those jokes, by the way. All right, so similarly, we're now in the main activity on Android. Make sure I set that as my startup project. Sound effects are free. So here we have the forms in it, as before. And then very simply, we're doing new history as before, and we're saying create fragment, because in this case, we want fragment. As Jason mentioned, we had an implementation previously, but it was more cumbersome. It was creating activities. And if you spend any amount of time working in Android, especially these days, you would prefer a fragment, would you not? So that's what we have here. So let me go ahead and run this. Super speedy-like, and have a sip of my Sprite. This is not a product placement. If it was product placement, I need to turn this way. I think it is running. I need to flip. Here we go. Oh, that's not. That's clearly not Android. All right. Navigate the Mac. Where's my Android player? Bro. Who did this? Start. Sit down. It's broken. Are you trying to bail me out? Nah, whatever. All right. Hey, forget that. You totally know what Android looks like. Actually, I can probably run Android over here. Maybe, maybe not. Kill. Didn't think I'd be standing on stage saying kill. Hey, you know what? Somebody had some foresight and recorded this in a video, which I thought I would never need to use. But I don't want to cheat you, okay? So I'm telling you it's a video. Honesty, right? And I'm going to show you. Okay, here's the droid loading up. Boom, play that. You can see this, right? It is playing. OK, Droid's loading up. It's going to come to the front. I recorded this just before the session just in case. Application is running. I didn't notice it. Needed to go get it. There we go. All right. There's my Android application. You can see that it's themed as an Android application. Oh, look at that. Xamarin.Forms in my Android application. So my whole Android app can be run in Xamarin.Android, blazing fast, everything you've ever wanted from an Android experience, but you have that one screen or two screens or half the screens in your app. You get to choose what you want to do with this. Cool? So we're, again, beating a dead horse. You get to do more. All right. Last demo. Oh, well, look at this. Our time is excellent. All right, last demo, going back to 8, because you're like, this is cool. Let's see it on iOS. All right, so here's what it looks like on iOS. Here's my app delegate. Pop to the root view. Where did I put this thing? Create view controller. There it is. And since I can zoom, show you how cool that is, right? History is my XAML page. Create view controller tells me very clearly what kind of native element I'm getting. I'm getting a UI view controller. Let's run this. So this is not available in 2.3.5. This will be available in a preview coming as soon as I can possibly twist Jason's arm to let me release it. And when it's out there, I'm going to tweet the heck out of it, and I want you to take a look at it. That is a really small iPhone. That's a really big iPhone. That's a good-size iPhone. You can't practice this. Here we go. Xamarin.Forms in my iOS application. Come on. It is. I'm telling you, it's going to sink in as you think about it. You're like going, I can do so much more with this than I realized. Now, the great thing is, as we let off with the entire presentation, right, is that anything that you have already been doing with Xamarin.Forms, you absolutely can continue doing. We are trying to make it better. We are making it better. We're working closely with you, the community, with our vendors, with our partners. We want everybody to win at this thing. And that's that's why I joined the team. I saw the massive opportunity, and I'm like, this is amazing. So my title is Senior Program Manager. I'm new to Microsoft. I ran my own businesses for the past 10 years. So I'm not entirely sure what that all means yet. I'm still trying to figure out, what the job title is, because I'm not really in this for the job title. I'm all about helping developers do more, do better. So, it's not a sales pitch. It's why I'm here. I want to help you succeed at what you're doing, help you navigate things, help you develop the best apps you possibly can. And when you nail it, I want to help you celebrate it, okay? So, to wrap up, I have a couple more points, and then we'll be done. Not here. You saw that demo. We're good there. I need to go back to 7. We saw that. We saw that. So you probably heard us talk about XAML standard or heard this mentioned earlier, and I know there's been a lot of questions about this, and I'll be happy to answer all of your questions. What this is it's a specification that's out there on GitHub. We want you to go read it. We want you to go digest it, talk about it with your friends, and say, well, how does this make sense? We're working more and more closely as every day goes by with the Windows team, with the UWP team, to say, okay, we have these 2 XAMLs. How are we working together? What's the way forward? We want to make sure that the developers at large are comfortable with what they're doing and make this as powerful as it possibly can be. So right now, still in the specification stage, your feedback is really, really important, which is why this is out there, which is why it's on GitHub, why it's being done out in the open, okay? So please take a look at that. And what's next? What can you do now? You can download 2.3.5 Pre-3, which I know everybody in the room is going to do, right? Upgrade your apps and see what's going on. Certainly join in on that performance conversation I mentioned in the forums. A lot of our conversations happen in the Xamarin forums right now. So that's a great place not only to get your questions answered from the community, but as well, some support is in there. And then also watch for the 3.0 pre. As soon as that is ready, we have a first bite of that to start delivering to you I'm certainly going to be pushing. We're going to be pushing hard. We want to get that to you. Very excited about the things that Jason showed. Are you guys excited about that stuff? I think it's addressing the power, that's because we're talking to you and we're listening to you and we know what you're doing with your applications and what you need, I think. And you're seeing that direction, hopefully, play out in how we are designing the future of Xamarin.Forms. Download Xamarin today. Check it out. I've got 4 minutes left. People are tweeting at me. My wrist is blowing up. It's absolutely amazing. Please, come see us afterwards and let's talk. Here's our contact information. I'll be around in the hub, down at the hub. Make sure you visit the vendors as well. Cool. Hey, that's my email address. Use it, please. And my Twitter handle. Follow me. Tweet at me. If I'm sleeping, I won't reply. People are taking pictures of it. Cool? Hey, thanks everybody for coming.